Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, and today is Thursday, July 9th. This is the Olentangy Local Schools Board of Education business session. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Kern, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item is to approve the agenda. And at everyone's seat, there should have been an addendum to the agenda. It's rather lengthy, but it's that time of year where we're finalizing hiring and staffing for next year. So with that, right, there's no others, just the addendum,
Right.
no other changes,
Yep.
amendments, etc.
Just the addendum.
So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as addended.
I'll move. Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, the first item is to go into executive session. To that end, I would accept the motion to go into executive session to pursue to the Ohio Revised Code, to consider the employment, dismissal, discipline, and/or the investigation of charges or complaints against public employees, or to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law and regulations and state statutes. With that, could I please have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on going into executive session? I will add, it would likely be a lengthy executive session,
Sorry.
expecting 45 minutes to an hour. We have quite a bit to cover, so plan accordingly. When we come back, we will be taking action on the rest of the agenda. So with that, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Thank you. Before we'll call the meeting back to order, apologize for the length of the executive session, but we had quite a few items to cover. And so we are now back in session, correct?
Yes.
So the next item is board president's report. I will be brief since we are running late. I just want to talk about dates for a minute because there's been a number of emails and changes that I want to make sure we get clear. So our next scheduled board work session and business session is August 13th. That has not changed. Right? That's been the same. We have consolidated. We had a retreat set up for the 18th and a business session set up for the 20th, which is like a Tuesday and Thursday the same week. We're consolidating those meetings to one meeting, to the one meeting on the 18th. It'll be here. Typically, we'll do the retreat up at Columbus State. The last couple of times we've done it, we're going to do it here because we'll do a business session as well. So again, instead of having 3 quick meetings in the month of August, we'll do two with the first one being, I'd say probably relatively quick. The second one being a little more substantive with the retreat as well as work session items. And again, I know, Mr. White, you claim we try to schedule things when you're not available, but we don't know if you're not available if you don't respond to our request for information. So we've repeatedly asked you if these dates work. We have yet to hear from you. The work of the board is going to move ahead, whether or not it's convenient for you or not, okay? All right. That concludes my president's report. With that, I'll go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I'm going to try to keep mine brief also. Actually, I promise I'll keep it brief. It's only about 7 slides, and I do agree it's been a long evening. First and foremost, good things. Before I get into good things that we had on the agenda update, just the fact that Kelsey and her sisters were found safe, and after a day or so of worry, I think we're all very, very thankful for that, and that's a great thing, actually. So I wanted to start that off because that's somewhat new news, but it's a very good thing. Secondly, summer newsletters be delivered July 26th. Our new district website's launching the 29th. And a little bit about the website, you will see this, but it's going to be more user-friendly and have easier access to information on the district website. So look for that, July 29th, coming your way. Hiring update, as you know, this is the July 9th meeting. Tomorrow is the, as they say, magic day in education land where you actually don't have to let people out of their contract. Job openings for 15-16, we have hired 112. We have 8 still to hire, and again, as you have seen on the addendum, we're hiring right up to the last moment. I believe we have 2 additional that came through on the certified end, so we still do have 8 to hire. That means we are 94% completed. So that's a very good thing. And again, I'll credit the building leaders and HR for getting just a lot of work done in that amount of time from when school ended and when this upcoming year will be coming. Additional hires on the addendum, and as you all know about the August hirings, those are 1-year contracts that automatically expire. So we'll have to be acting on that next year. Administrative changes. I know we have many of the administrators here, and again, for time, I'm not going to go through this because I see Mr. O'Brien looking at me sideways. And welcome all the individuals that are here this evening. If you would, if you're new, please stand up, as they say, to tell the truth. That old. These are many of our administrators. So, thank you all for coming, and congratulations. I know most all of those individuals, they're going to do a great job. So congratulations to all, and keep up the great work. Agenda items, again, quickly, blizzard bags. We do this on a yearly basis. We must approve that. We have emergency access driveway into Wyandotte Creek, or not Wyandotte Creek, Walnut Creek, that would be over on this side, not Wyandotte Creek, that'd be Wyandotte Run. We have drainage and sewer easement that was part of the original agreement with Hyatt's and Liberty Tree. We're in the MEC purchasing cooperative in regard to purchasing school buses. And last but not least, we have HR Imaging Partners as our district photo services. Important dates, I'm not going to belabor this fact. Mr. O'Brien went over several of them, but just from a school starting standpoint, we have convocation, and our vendor fair is Tuesday, August the 11th. Middle school, secondary be there at 7:30, elementary 10. As always, you are all very much invited, and I will tell you this, it's always positive comments from staff members when they see board members at that convocation. So if you can make both, that's great. If you can only make one, that's very good too. So please try to make that. I'm not sure how many vendors we'll have in our vendor fair. That's something we've done for the past 4 to 5 years, but it continues to grow in the 80 to 90 range, and I would hope that there will be that many because those are the individuals that support the district in the community. First day of school is Wednesday, August the 12th. Again, Mr. O'Brien talked about the work session and the board, and I will just leave you with some final thoughts, and I'm not going to sit up here every meeting because this is my last one. It's not going to be a Brett Favre moment when I come back 400 different times. This is it.
Comment forms are in the back.
I had several conversations over 6.5 years, and I just want to touch upon 3 of them. The first one I had, and these final thoughts talk a little bit about challenges that we have before us. The first conversation I had, even before I came here, was in Manhattan, believe it or not, with a guy by the name of Scott Davis. He happened to be the new superintendent of Olentangy Local Schools. And we were having a very, very good conversation about the fact that he just come from Morgan Local into a very affluent school district that was growing, was highly successful. And we were talking about academic achievement and where he thought he could take this school district. And part of his performance pay was get us moving up the ladder, because in the similar districts, in comparison, we were number 19, I believe, out of 20. So I can remember this conversation vividly because I said, there's only one way to go, and that's up. Fast forward to just this past year, today we're number 26 out of 610 school districts in the state of Ohio. We have a performance index of 108.7, and we continue to have families move into our district because of the school system. Now, I'm not saying that to say, pour Gatorade on me, or you guys do a cheer for me. I'm saying that because of the individuals that are sitting out here tonight, and many, many more like them, the work that they do and the efforts that they put forth for the lucky 20,000 or so kids in this school district. But I'll also remind you of this. It's not about test results. Even though we love test results, it's not about test results. It's about making the difference for kids, because we are grooming them for the future. And whatever success they may have, it's not going to come down to test results. I like the banners as much as anybody else, but let's just keep things in perspective, that the fact we have a lot of people doing a lot of great, great things with a lot of kids. That's number one. Second conversation I had was actually a two-way conversation between individuals at Nationwide, of which Mr. O'Brien was one of those conversations, and Mr. McPherson was the other. Now, remember, we were going into a levy, and both of these are extremely positive, and they both kind of tell us a little bit about the direction and the goals of individuals on the school board. I remember I was down at the Columbus Blue Jackets game, and Mr. McPherson said, you need to be a leader and determine how far we can stretch these dollars in a very resourceful and efficient manner. And then I think it was one of Mr. O'Brien's maybe first board meetings, or one of the first. In fact, he was sitting right here. And even though he and I didn't like the conversation very much, it was a conversation I think that had to be had in the school district. And it talked about fiscal responsibility and financial efficiencies and how we can make it better. Because the road we were on from a finance standpoint was not going to last. You cannot continue to go back to local controlled school districts every 3 years and say we need more. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. So I've been very appreciative, and I know Kevin and I joke around a lot sometimes, and sometimes we get serious and we don't agree with each other. But I think at the end of the day, we're always on the same page as we walk through. And that night, obviously, he kind of made me mad, and I know I've made him mad too, and that's okay. But I think what he did was said, look, here's the deal. I represent the community. I represent the public. We've got to get a grasp on this financial efficiency. So instead of averaging 3 years on the ballot, and Brian, I'm not going to make you nervous here, so just relax, because I know every time I talk levies, you go, oh, Lord, don't fence me into something I can't control. Instead of every 3 years, I can tell you this, we're going to have a positive balance through 18. Might be 6 years before we go on the ballot, might be 7 years. But one thing that we found out very quickly is the fact that as long as we continue to show our taxpayers that we are efficient and resourceful with our money, they will support us. So I appreciate, Mr. O'Brien, you bringing that forward, and of course I appreciate Mr. McPherson doing the same thing, because it's not an open checkbook in this business. It's just not. Along with that, I see Elaine and Eddie back there, and I have to tell you, that group has been a major part of this, because if you don't have that partnership to go along with that, it can very easily fall apart. She and I have gone months at a time without speaking also, but again, at the end of the day, we always came back to what's best for the 20,000 or so kids of Olentangy local schools. And I think that's going to continue. So I'm very appreciative of that. The third thing, as you can see up there, is a thing called social issues. Whether we're talking about substance, sexual abuse, whether we're talking about mental health needs, whether we're talking about diversity and how people are different, and it doesn't matter what part of those we're talking about. What matters is the fact that Olentangy has to be the leader of that parade and not the one that kind of falls behind and says, let's see what everybody else does. Because I want to tell you, we have social issues in this country, not just in Olentangy, in this country. And yeah, we're the reading, writing, arithmetic bunch, but we're also a direct reflection of our society, a direct reflection of our society. And for us to sit here working with our kids and make believe that those things don't happen in the social arena is an absolute travesty and what I would call sticking your head in the sand. So I'm proud of the fact Olentangy's been out front on that. It's been uncomfortable. Many of these conversations we had this evening, they've been uncomfortable, but they've been very much needed. And we must continue to be a leader in dealing with these social issues. Mr. Rafe and I have talked about that many, many times, and it's a challenge before us, but we can't wish these social issues away, we can't hope these social issues away, and we can't look the other way in regard to these social issues. We have to meet them head on and be the leader of the social issues. And I have all the faith in the world that that's going to continue to happen. So those are my three. With that said and done, I want to thank each and every one of you. Each and every one of you bring an individual piece to this table, and I very much appreciate it. And it has been an extreme pleasure to serve this school district. In fact, I like it so much, I'm going to be a taxpayer here, of which I already have been. So I'll be around, and thank you so much for everything. I will be happy to entertain any questions that the board may have at this time.
Questions for Dr. Lucas?
I would just make a comment, if I may. Did you want to speak first?
No, you got it.
As a thank you to Dr. Lucas, did you want to say something?
The only thing I was going to say, and we've had a few opportunities to be appreciative, but certainly when you took the job, one of the goals you set was to leave the district better off, when you were done. And I think your track record clearly demonstrates you were successful in that objective. So for that, as well as the personal relationship, I think certainly thank you for that. And I know you're going to be successful in whatever you do. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Just as a way of thank you, 3 points. Your insight, your instincts have been a great value to the deliberations of this school district. I do certainly appreciate the respect that you have shown me and others. And thirdly, I got to tell you, I've always enjoyed our conversations because I know they're always going to be laced with some humor. And that goes a long way.
Yes, it does.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm going to be selfish on behalf of my 2 boys, one who's already graduated and is gainfully employed because of what he got here. So on behalf of my 2 boys, I'd like to say thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Roger.
And as the only person here on the board that hired him,
Responsible for
I say this a lot. I always write down my feelings when I interview someone at the top of the page, and he knows this. I wrote down Lou Holtz because that's my favorite coach in the world, and that's what he reminded me of. At that time, we were looking for someone who could lead us into battle because we had a lot of battles before us, and he has done just that very successfully. And it's been a great 6 years, 8 years, whatever it's been. It's been, I've lost count, but very much appreciate that you moved here to Olentangy.
Thank you, Julie. And we will continue to battle, by the way. And we have a good man that leads us into that battle, too. So thank you. Thank you all.
Your legacy will not be just what you did here, but the shape in which you left us, and not just financially, but academically, talent, et cetera. So it's very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Curran, Treasurer's Report?
Yes, Mr. King mentioned the humor that Dr. Lucas gave. I'm going to give some bad news, so we'll talk about state funding. Always the treasurer
My
to talk
favorite
about the money guy,
topic.
talk about bad news, so.
Killjoy.
I recall back on the June 25th meeting, we had thought through the joint conference committee between the Senate and the House, we had some additional state funds as far as our minimum per pupil were concerned. Unfortunately, at the 11th hour, I guess he signed it at 8 o'clock, but at the very last moment, Governor Kasich vetoed our minimum per pupil, which unfortunately, we still did get an increase. While if we would have had that increase, it'd been about $4.3 million over the 2 years. I'm sorry, we lost about $4.3 million with that swipe of the pen per se. And so we still get $1.7 million additional dollars over the 2 years, and that's because of the gain caps. We get 7.5% increases over the next each year. I have in my forecast 5%, so unfortunately I guess I was pretty much right. I hate to say that in this case, but so that was about $900,000. So the difference there is about $800,000 more than was in our forecast. This will be updated in October with that information. So it is very unfortunate. We are around still $600 per pupil by fiscal 17. The minimum per pupil funding there, again, just to repeat, I know we said it many times, was an attempt to get closer to our non-public schools. In the Senate version and the House version, both, it was more of a minimum level, 20% of the per pupil level, but still it equates around the same, so it's around $1,200. So we're not quite there yet. We'll continue to advocate for that. This doesn't mean the end, but we will continue towards our fairness issue for this district. So there again, it's still we are predominantly locally funded. Our taxpayers, I guess, at the state level are getting 4 cents back, which is not fair, but we'll continue. We are thankful for the increase, but we will continue to work. Any questions on that matter? Okay. Hate to beat a dead horse, right?
Line item veto left us kind of speechless.
What's that?
Yes,
Yes.
it
Line item veto leaves
is
you kind of
what it
speechless.
is.
They were that close, right, to the
Right.
finish. And a lot of good work by Dr. Lucas, Mr. Kern, the administration team really effectively lobbying downtown State House. That really got us, in essence, to the 1 yard line. We just couldn't get it over the finish
Yes.
line. But it's disappointing, but doesn't mean it's over, and we just keep at it. So.
Just talk about treasurer action items this evening. The usual approved minutes from past meetings, appropriations for the new year. We're in FY16. We're in already. Approve a consulting services agreement with Milestone Benefits. That is for our healthcare brokers and consulting fees, or work, I should say. Previously, we were with Aon. We were not unhappy. We were satisfied with Aon, but we did put out an RFP to the market. The way it came to be, Milestone and going through the process came out on top. They are actually a local company. They're out of the Powell area, and actually they were the lowest in price, but that wasn't the only reason. We feel they'll be able to service not only our brokerage and consulting services, but be able to better manage and have solutions as we continue on this journey of the Affordable Care Act and how that progresses on. So we think that would be great. Previously with Aon, we were spending $70,000 a year. We'll be just slightly under $60,000 now a year with Milestone. So we feel that is a good thing. That's why we do RFPs, is to get a better service and maybe price competition. So donations to the district. Dr. Lucas talked about this the last time. It's just on the agenda this evening for the Next Gen Science Lab over Shanahan Middle School, totaling $150,000. So I know Dr. Lucas updated the board on that, but that approval of that donation is on this evening. And then we have the 403B plan document. It's just updating changes over time, and we're offering another option, the 403B Roth option for our employees. This is similar, for anyone out there, it's similar to your 401k in the private sector. So that's it for the treasurer's action items this evening. Any questions?
Questions, Mr. Curran? Okay, the next agenda item, we'll just collapse two together. Any public comment, public participation?
No.
So it'll be items 8 and 9. So item 10 is the board action item, and this is an action item to cover the transition period from when, in this case, Mr. Rafe is transitioning from his prior role to the new role. And you'll see similar items in the superintendent action items. The other administrative changes Dr. Luke has referenced, normal practice to cover that transition period from existing contract to new contract and transitioning roles, responsibilities, and duties. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the only board action item, and that's item A.
I'll move.
Have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, so that item passes 5-0. Present the treasurer action items, Mr. King?
Yes, for this evening, present treasurer action items A through E.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, those items pass 5-0.
Go ahead.
A7 and A11, please.
A7
Pulling these out.
and A11.
So A7.
On the
is
addendum.
I'm sorry?
On the addendum.
A11, yeah, on the
That
addendum.
was on the addendum. So
Correct.
A7 is the new teacher academy stipend, and A11 of the supplemental employment,
Correct.
which would include any of the supplementals, right? So this is coaches, diversity,
Mhm.
building leadership, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay.
So I ask to present superintendent action items A7 and 11 for approval, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. White?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
I now ask to present superintendent action items, the rest of A, would be A1 through 10 now, I guess, and B through H for approval, please.
So moved.
A second.
Any discussion? So, just so maybe the discussion, this would include the item that we covered in executive session, with the determination. Just to set up the context of that discussion. We spent considerable time on that matter. We watched the video. My opinion is no dispute in fact here. We all agree to what we saw. And so I think our vote will reflect what we saw. Go ahead.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Item passed 5-0. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Item 5-0. Okay. We are adjourned. Next meeting, August 13th, 6 p.m.